Weekend we hear the following from the Magi. We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage. The interesting thing about that is that it was through observing things, it was through science, through studying the stars, through tracking the motion of heavenly bodies and moons and the sun and so on and so forth. It was through that sort of scientific observation and study and life that led these Magi to Christ. Sadly, today, it's almost the opposite is happening. The number one reason in survey after survey after survey of people who have left Christianity or have left the church, according to them, the reason for leaving is science. So, science and astronomy and all these things led the Magi to Christ, and yet many people use that for their reason for leaving Christ. I think we need to maybe reflect a little bit about that, reflect on a little bit about the relationship between our faith and our science, and examine and ask ourselves, is science a path to God, like it was for the Magi? Is paying attention to the things that are going on around us, the creation that God has given to us, is that a path to God or away from God? There's an attempt out there that I think we first of all need to address that tries to bring together faith and science that the church rejects. It gets a lot of press and a lot of people debate it and talk about it. It is what is typically referred to as intelligent design theory. It is an attempt by mostly evangelical Christians to say that through science you can establish with mathematics and studies and physics the idea that there is an intelligent designer. But the church again rejects that, and it's important, I think, to begin there with the understanding that the church says that that is not science. That's not something that we can actually establish. But the church goes about 98% of that way, while stopping short of saying there is such an equation that proves the existence of God, or that you can see it in a test tube, or whatever it might be. But what we do believe as Catholics is that when we look around at the world, when we study the stars, or we look up at the heavens, we go out on a night sky and we stare up, or we look around us. We look at the person that's sitting next to us in this pew, or we look at ourselves and the fact that we are existing and that we are breathing. We look at mathematics or physics or biology and the beauty of it all. And the fact that it's here, the response from rational people ought to be, wow, that's pretty amazing. And not only ought we to look around and say, wow, this is pretty fascinating, that you and I are here, that there is a world, that there is an earth, that there are stars. Not only ought we to say, wow, that's pretty amazing, but it also begs a question. It asks a question. And that question ought to be, for rational people, where did this come from? Where did I come from? Where did you come from? Where did the stars come from? Where did everything that we see around us, where did it come from? Some people, of course, turn to the Big Bang Theory. But that's not sufficient, because if there was a Big Bang, then something had to do the banging. You know who came up with the Big Bang Theory? It was a Catholic priest. When people say that the Big Bang Theory is a rejection or proves that faith in God is not real, I would ask, then why didn't the person that came up with it leave the Catholic priesthood? He stayed Catholic, and he stayed a priest after coming up with the Big Bang Theory. It clearly was not a threat to this priest, right? Nor should it be a threat to ours, because when we see and recognize or talk about the Big Bang Theory, again, what was banging and who was banging it? 70% of scientists today are atheists. One of the most famous ones is Stephen Hawking, right? And he said that there are likely lots of Big Bangs happening all over the place. But that's really bad science. Nowhere else in science do we say likely. Saying something likely is happening is not science, and he's still left with explaining why and who is doing all the banging, if there are lots of them happening. So how does the church approach this issue? We don't say that you can prove the existence of God with math or with a test tube or an equation. So how is it that the church tries to talk about these issues of faith and science. I think we do well to turn to 1,000 years ago. St. Thomas Aquinas put forward something that's talked about still today in many places. He put forward his 5 proofs for the existence of God. But he's not saying, again, that they're mathematical, that they are using data that is from the realm of the observable, the measurable, the quantifiable. He's talking about proofs by talking about the idea more from looking around and simply taking in and asking what is there. So we're not saying that these are scientific proofs of the existence of God, but they are nonetheless worth mentioning and talking about and discussing, because I think they get to what leads the Magi to Christ. St. Thomas Aquinas, without getting into each of the 5 and the nuances and all of that, basically what he says is, if you take all the things that we see around us and you have any observational curiosity at all, then again, that question arises, where did they come from? So St. Thomas Aquinas said things like, well, we look around us today and you and I are in motion and the things are in motion and the stars are in motion and we're moving. And if there are things that are moving, if we walk backwards from that, something had to get everything moving that doesn't move itself. And so St. Thomas says, the unmoved mover is God. He talks about causes. Again, another take on the same thing. You and I have causes. We are caused, something caused us to happen, something caused us to exist. Then what caused that which caused you and I to exist? We keep following that backwards. There had to be an uncaused cause. And St. Thomas says that that is God. And he says if there is order in the world, then something had to order it. If there's beauty in the world, then something has to be beauty. Again, none of those are mathematics. None of those are physics. But those are proofs in the sense of what we can just come to know in our hearts and can come to deal with and wrestle with in our hearts. He's not saying that they're mathematical. You and I readily acknowledge that not all things are proved within the realm of chemistry or math. If I say that I love my mom, no one says, prove it with an equation. If I say I love my dad, no one says, well, show me the chemistry of it. We can know things and talk and discuss about the reality of things that lie beyond that which is scientifically knowable. I'd like to go 1,000 years before St. Thomas to another pillar of our church, St. Augustine, who brings these same questions up in a poem. He wrote the following about the fact that reality begs the question of where all of this came from. And so St. Augustine wrote this in the 4th century. Question the beauty of the earth. Question it. Question the beauty of the sea. Question the beauty of the air around you, the beauty of the sky. Question the order of the stars. Question the sun, whose brightness lights the days. Question the moon, whose splendor softens the gloom of night. Question the living creatures that move in the waters, that roam upon the earth, that fly through the air. Question the spirit that lies hidden and the matter that is manifest to our eyes. Question the visible things that are ruled, and question the invisible things that rule them. Question all of these, and they will answer you, behold, and see that we are beautiful. Their beauty is their confession to God. St. Augustine ends with this beautiful question to his poem. Who made these beautiful changing things, if not one who is beautiful but does not change? The Magi were men who stared at the sky night after night, studied the heavens, tracked the progress of the stars and the planets and the sun, and saw the order that was there, so much so that when a new thing happened, they were able to recognize it and follow this new star. Because of their work and their study and their science and their astronomy, it led them to Christ. May you and I look around more at the world around us, at the human being sitting next to us this morning, at the fact that we ourselves are breathing and thinking and praying and loving. And may we follow the reality of these things to their origin. May observing the heavens and the stars and all creation put us on a journey as well. A journey that, like these astronomers, these scientists that we remember today, a journey that also leads us to a child, who is Christ the Lord.